One, two. I told you guys Zoom's always complicated. Anyway, so what gave you guys the idea for Indigenous Peoples Day? How did this idea even come about in the first place?
Well, I could give it a crack and then
Well, that would be
yeah.
you, Lev, as you started before I. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day is about 30 years old. Um, I think in the 1990s it was the got started in California. I think it was in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Um, and So we're just kind of moving along with there's a movement around the country to have Indigenous Peoples Day. Um, Really, it's a paradigm shift from celebrating Columbus Day in this country, uh, which if we go back into the history, it's that would be a celebration of the genocide of Native peoples in this country. And so, with the growing awareness and reflection on kind of the healing and reconciliation and repair that needs to be done in our country, Indigenous Peoples Day is kind of an annual cultural practice, a collective practice for us to come together and remember that, and then give us energy and inspiration to do the work throughout the year. So that's kind of the larger context. And then, around here, yeah, we were just kind of inspired by that idea and wanting to participate in that national movement here in the Berkshires.
Was it ever really even celebrated in the Berkshires as much before you guys started holding these events? Or did it need this like push to make people more aware of of Indigenous Peoples Day being celebrated?
Well, I know Sean's been coming to this area and doing cultural education for 20 years, and there's a history of having powwows here. Our colleagues, friend Fidel and Susan have been organizing powwows since the early 2000s. And then the W.E.B. Du Bois Legacy Committee, are the ones that really push, took the steps necessary to officially put Indigenous Peoples Day on the calendar. I think in 2018. So, all the good work that happens is you were standing on the shoulders of the people that took the steps before us. So, yeah, I don't know, Sean, do you want to say some things of all the work that you've been doing, in your community and then also out here for all these years? Oh, you're muted though.
Absolutely. I've been working toward a state of well-briety, not only on my own behalf, but for my people and for all people, really. And well-briety just basically means, getting a handle on those things that have control over your life in a negative way. Those things could be drugs and alcohol, could be gambling, it could be just so many different things, up for each person to kind of sift through themselves and find what's alienating their path. I mean, a lot of it has to do with here is getting back to our cultural ways, going back to the cultural indigenous teachings that were handed down by many indigenous folks from thousands of years ago up to just recently. A lot of it is prophetic prophecy work, in talking of a day where the world is going to become sick, and there's going to be a sign that we as people we need to get back to those indigenous teachings because we become separated from those teachings, and being separated from it, we lose our respect for the world, for ourselves, for family, for community, for the environment. And so all of it to me is wrapped up in one: well-briety for yourself, all the way up to well-briety for the environment. It all has to click and be one, you know. Um, and it started out very, I mean, these were things that come to mind as far back as 1992 for me. And the work I started doing was about, it started getting, I'd say probably about 10 years after that, really started going into taking those things that I've learned and sharing them with others. And it's helped me in a very profound way, not only with my own self and well-briety, but with other people. And it wasn't even planned. I just talked about the things that I've learned and share those things, and uh, people want to know more about it, and how that can help them and their community and their family and such. So, kind of has been like a snowball going down the hill. It just keeps getting bigger, you know. I've been coming to the Berkshires, like I've said, for 20 plus years, sharing my people's history, culture, showing that the Mohican people are still around. When I first started coming, nobody knew that Mohicans even existed. Some people are still coming to that fact that they are still around, and they are living somewhere out there today, and sharing our ways and our culture. And that's something that we were told that we have to do, not only, for ourselves, but for the greater good of all the world. Because within our indigenous teachings and culture are other people's indigenous teachings. And when I say indigenous, I don't mean like a certain race. I mean those the original teachings of being connected with the earth that all our ancestors had, you know. And so, in my journey of well-briety and enhancing those things, what I do, I find that a lot of other people can use those things as well. A lot of people who are disconnected, not just Native American people, but non-Native people, getting connected back to the indigenous mindset. It's not doesn't mean going off and back and living in huts and stuff like that, but just having that respect for the earth and the animals, the water, the air, everything, and your fellow human being. And I met Love, several years ago, and through a common friend, Michael Johnson, and talked with him. We had the same vision. It was the same thing, even though we were kind of going about it in different ways and such. But we had that same vision of in the end, that making alliances for a viable future for everyone, you know, and leaning on the indigenous cultural teachings for us to do that as well. So yeah, we started. And I believe we already had one Indigenous Day celebration before I came along, and but I think from the second one on, up until today, I've been involved, with that and spreading the word. And it's always been a really good event. Indigenous Peoples Day walk that we do, been a really good event. A lot of people come, and a lot of people get not only are they educated on some things, but they leave with a passion and a will to want to try to go out and make things better themselves, you know. And so, like I said, we concentrate on that well-briety, not only of just the earth and the land, but all the way to communities and families and our own individual selves. And so we've come together, and it's been success every time we go and we share.
Sean, how does it make you feel to see the indigenous people and their contributions to society? How does it make it feel for you to see this being recognized, especially by more and more people as time goes along? Because I remember last year there were like hundreds of people at basically all the events that Lev held.
Yeah. I From my experience, it makes me feel really good. For one, not only are a lot of the people who are coming, at least from our tribe, coming out there. Many of them, it's their first time, and it's such a profound experience. It's like that pilgrimage coming home, and they find themselves not only like I said, not only working on themselves, but finding a greater amount of people that are wanting us to share, what we have. Because you go back 25, 30 plus years ago, but even some people today, there's still a lot of people, Native people, who are very standoffish about sharing things. When you go back and look at the history of what's been done, it's rightly so. But we're in that time now that we know that we've been given those signs that we have to start sharing what we know, and it's for the better of the greater good of the earth and everyone.
How can you encourage people to share more instead of like being standoffish? I mean, what would you say to anyone who is standoffish about
Yeah.
culture and the history? Just encourage them to talk and share.
Well, it's not easy.
I can understand.
It usually takes some time and some dialogue with each other for a while, and just letting them know. I mean, in the bigger picture, like with what other natives are doing, uh, some of the higher known people like Chief Avril Looking Horse, who is huge in this movement of well-briety for the earth and all peoples coming together. And also mainly, I guess, going through our own traumas that we've had, our peoples, whether ourselves or our grandparents and their parents, and going back and recognizing them traumas and really identifying why would you be hesitant, if these things work so good for us, shouldn't they work good for the greater good? We can't just make things good in our backyard, you know because the whole world's connected. We've got to share that thing. If we want that nice, good place for ourselves to live, a healthy, good, decent place for ourselves and the next generation, 7 generations, we got to share that with everybody. It's got to be an all of us kind of thing. We have that word Kiana, which means all of us together. Not us and you or me and you or whatever. All of us. It's for all of us to come together, and that's part of that prophecy too. That it's for the whole world, and we need to share. So I think part of it, I mean, you can talk with people and have them understand, and sometimes you just got to get them out and expose them to the outer world. And that's what we kind of did with these kids with this trip we did to the Marionville Center down in New York last month. Is a lot of these kids are only used to their own culture and not really used to interacting with people outside their own culture. And so bringing them out and not only teaching them about their own culture and stuff, but exposing them to other cultures and other people, and just seeing the change that they go, their whole perspective on things and who good people truly are. And so a lot of them who really didn't know much about it or think about it in the beginning, now a lot of them want to do that work. They want to do this work now because they got out and they got to meet a lot of good people and people who are willing to help and people who care.
Lev, what have you learned over time by co-organizing these events in the Berkshires?
Yeah, I was reflecting on some of this before the interview, and I always remember there was someone at a local AVF event. We had a small dinner a couple of years ago, and we were talking about our mission, and he said, "Look, you're doing some really big things. Like on the one hand, you're focusing on, solidarity and allyship and, supporting indigenous cultural revitalization. And then over here, you're talking about climate preparedness and resilience and climate leadership for the community. It's like, I think you really need to choose one or the other." That's what he said to me. And that was really helpful to get that feedback to see, yeah, there are people that haven't made that connection. For me, that connection is self-evident. And so kind of in the last number of years, I've seen that. When you're asking me, what have I learned, is like if I go into the deep roots of the crisis that we're in. You know, it's a meta crisis, a poly crisis, all convergent crises, everything that we're dealing with in society right now, locally, regionally, nationally, globally, um, the same patterns. What we're doing is we're saying that the indigenous teachings that I've have transformed my perspective, from reading and listening to elders. It's a way of looking at life where we say our relationships with each other as humans, as families, as relatives, as communities. Um, is connected, the way that we treat each other is the same to how we treat the earth and, to the rivers and the ecosystem. So doing this kind of healing work as a community to say something really bad happened here, 200 years ago. There were the Mohican people had to leave, not in a good way. They were forced out of here violently, and that's something we don't want to look at. It's an elephant in the room, throughout the country. But we don't really know how to respond to it. We're kind of making it up as we go along. We're trying to figure it out. How do we ask for forgiveness? How do we heal? How do we make amends? But in the last few years, there's been a lot of tears shed. Myself, I've seen other people in the community through the healing ceremonies that we've done. It's healing for us as people, everyone. And then the same people that are showing up for these events and for this kind of work are also showing up for conversations around what do we need to be doing to make our community prepared for the future, to have a viable future, to have a climate resilient community. So there's that connection there, that we heal our relationships with each other as people, and then we also, in the same thought, in the same gesture, we heal and prepare for the changes that are already upon us. The fact that we haven't had a real winter the last 2 years, we haven't had snows and so on and so forth. We can go down the line, but I'll just say that much at this time.
Sean, Lev, what do you think still needs to be done when it comes to recognition and education of Indigenous people, not just nationally, but also in Berkshire County? What do you think is still needed? Not just for this event, but I'm talking about year round.
I would say, like you said, recognition and education. More of it. I see more of that happening through the schools. I've been almost all the schools throughout the Berkshire County. Um, I'm sure there's a couple I
Oh,
haven't made it to
Sean,
yet, but a lot of it through the trying to work through the tribe to get actual curriculum into the school. You know, but and I think that is something on a larger scale that a lot of states should do within their schools, is to expand Native American education, because it's part of the history of this country is Native American peoples and the people that were here, for tens of thousands of years beforehand. And there's only, maybe a couple pages in our school books, to talk about Native American people, you know. So I think a broader sense of education within the schools, and probably evolving the curriculum as it is, in understanding that with Native Americans, that every tribe is different, that they don't all speak the same language, they don't all have the same culture, they're not all should be wrapped up into one category. that they're very diverse.
Lev, would you like to add to that?
Yeah. Continuing again, what Sean was saying, education and awareness, and another program that we just launched this year is the climate leadership cohort journey. So we have our first group that started this past January, and it has been meeting all year until the end of the year. And then we're having another group start next January. And it's a group that's focused on these questions and going deeper and having conversations and saying, how can I, as an individual and as part of an organization or a community group, um, step up further and stretch. And so some of the examples, we have a member of one of the local churches who's in the group, and they've really done a lot of work in their church around saying land acknowledgements, for 2 or 3 years. But her experience as she's been talking about it through the year and thinking about, well, what action do I want to take to go further? She's been realizing that the land acknowledgement, it's starting to feel like just something that they do now. It's like, oh, it's part of the service. Oh, we got to put in the land acknowledgement. And so she's really thinking about how can we revive that so it's not just rote, it's not just something that we do, but it actually connects with, real relationships and real change of the systems in our community. So that's one example of something that someone's doing. But so that's really, when you say what needs to be done, it's you know, how we're kind of actively answering that question is building a coalition of organizations and community members, community leaders who together we're asking those questions and saying, what will the future of the Berkshires look like, if we have this worldview, this framework of social healing and also ecological healing. And then we put it into action. We say, oh, well, what are we going to do about it? What's the next step? And we go step by step.
Gotcha. So I've written several articles about this over time, and others have as well. What do you think hasn't been covered yet about, not just Indigenous people and also this event that you wish would be covered? I mean, what would you like to say that hasn't been said yet in these articles?
It's a good question.
Take your time.
Um, you mean that would be covered in a larger scale?
Yeah,
Uh, to
well,
the
something I haven't written yet in any of these articles
Yeah.
that you were like reading my article and say, hey, he should have written about this. He should have written about that. I mean, what should be? What else should I put in here?
Well, I don't know. I guess part of it is an understanding that Native people are still healing through the intergenerational trauma. That we're not all just fine. Like this. Like some people say, well, that happened a long time ago. You weren't there. Why are you you know upset? But they don't realize some of this stuff happened in my lifetime. You know, just being able to practice our own religion, 1978. I was 8 years old then. And the reverberation of those things, even though the laws may have changed, the effect is still there on the people. And that's what kind of causes a lot of people not to want to share. afraid to share, and they don't even know why. They just something's telling them no. Or a lot of the issues that we have at home that we're struggling with, and trying to help cure, and not only like I said at home, but abroad as well. Um, because we're survivors, through a lot of, we're uh, I guess a good way to put it, when we talk about people who we hear about an apocalypse, you know, and it's like the end of days, where something terrible happens, and many people are gone, and there's few survivors struggling along to try to survive and stuff. People don't realize that we Native Americans are living our apocalypse right now. That we have only a few survivors, struggling to regain what we once had, and it's still gone. The whole world we knew is gone. It's gone, and everything we loved it and appreciated and had at hand is gone. And we're still struggling. We're still struggling down through the generations. It passes down, that grief. Um, a lot of people think that Native American today are just happy-go-lucky people sitting on lawns smoking a peace pipe and everything is cool. And it's not. So we're still struggling a lot in dealing with this apocalypse that we're still living through.
Lev, would you like to add to that?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll just start with taking a deep breath, inviting everyone that's listening too to take a deep breath because that's something to listen to. What Sean just said, that's, that's the real human part of it, the pain and the the part that we don't really know have words for, it's kind of sometimes we just like stumble around with our words because how do you talk about things that are beyond our comprehension of what has happened, and in a lot of places are is still happening, Um, so I just want to say that, and then I had some thoughts, but then when I was listening to Sean, I had some other thoughts, and I want to just say that the generational trauma that Native people have endured, uh, um, the way that non-native people, can connect with it and be of use. And I'm just learning. I make a lot of mistakes. That's part of what I also wanted to say is it's important to as an ally or trying to be an ally to um, do for me, I've had to get over my fear of making mistakes because I make mistakes and then I say I'm sorry and then I keep trying. So so that's how I keep going like that. But the way that I can keep going and healing myself is to realize that, my ancestors too. Have generational trauma. I'm of Jewish Ukrainian ancestry, fourth generation, and um, you know, my ancestors were ran out of the Ukraine from oppression and persecution. And if we look across the board, all of our ancestors have dealt with colonization globally around. So there's that trauma is there in one way or the other. So then the healings always starts with ourselves too, in our own ancestry. And then it's not something that's just we're talking about other those people. It's all of us. We all live in this world. And there's a great quote. I can't remember her name. I think she's an Australian activist. She says, "If you've come here to help, then you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is tied up with mine, then let us work together." So that's kind of how I see it. And I guess I'll just say the last thing that I am that I think is important to bring into the conversation. Maybe you don't see it in the articles. Is that Canada is just is north of us, right? And certainly what's happened there is in terms of the governmental policies over the last 15 years, they're not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, but they have started this process of truth and reconciliation. I think in since 2008, on a national level, in the government, and have really put resources into that. And so just to promote the idea that we can do that here in this country, we can do it on a national level. One of my elders, Jake Singer, who has been participating in the our Berkshires Indigenous Peoples Day, he has been working for oh, 20 some odd years, maybe even more, on um, bringing recognition to Native American veterans. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he walked across the country on behalf of bringing awareness to more support needed for Vietnam veterans. And so he's working to get a Native American Veterans Day as a national holiday, November 7th. And he's been working on that, for 20 years, and that could happen, that can be passed. So just that's the last piece I want to share is that we can do that in this country, and that yeah, being part of this kind of a movement, it really can change things. It changes things on the individual level. Like my life has changed,
Mhm.
in terms of feeling more motivated and not apathetic about all the challenges in the world. Because I'm just, all right, let's get involved and start moving. And then when we're doing it together, we're building relationships and alliances. It's not easy, but it's not easy anyway. So if we're in relationship, if we're working on it, there's something positive that we can focus on.
Liv, Sean, I appreciate your time. Thank you. I think we pretty much covered everything here. The article will be next week's website. Sound good?
Thank you.